Oh, hey, how are you today? It's so good to see you. So, firstly, I have to say thank you. Thank you not just for showing up today, but showing up any other time that you have showed up. New subscribers, old subscribers, all of the above. I want to thank y'all so very much for views, engagement. And if you like in the content, make sure that you are letting me know that it works for you. And again, if you're not subscribed just yet, it's cool. I'm on standby when you're ready for me. I know how this goes. But all in all, per usual, I just have to say thank you because it means a lot that you guys continue to show up, continue to embrace the space. And I hope that the reciprocity exists, right? That I'm actually giving you something that helps you and is not just entertaining, but valuable. Something that you could take with you as you go throughout your day. So, without further ado, let's talk about this thing. Odell Beckham. Let me insert the clip here.
Sacrifice your whole life to get here. And you're like, yeah, I played 10 years in the league. And I always explain this to people, I'm like, bro, you give somebody a 5-year, $100 million contract, right? What is it really? It's 5 years for 60. You're getting taxed. Do the math. That's 12 a year, that you have to spend, use,
Save,
save,
invest.
invest, flaunt, like whatever, however, just being real. I'm gonna buy a car, I'm gonna get my mama a house, I'm gonna do, everything costs money. So if you spending $4 million a year, that's really 40 million over 5 years, eight a year, And now you start breaking down the numbers. It's like, that's a 5-year span of where you're getting 8 million. Can you make that last forever? And you always hear the people who ain't us and ain't been in the position like, oh, well, that would last a lifetime. Yeah, this job that I sacrificed my whole life for, they are giving me that. I didn't ask for the certain dollar amount or whatever, but we weren't taught about no financial literacy and all the way. We
We talk
weren't,
about it all the
we
time.
weren't taught this skill. And it's kind of like,
Odell Beckham is having a conversation about the inability to live on a 5 year, $100 million contract. And I want to talk about two things. So, when I did my BMF, business management and finance degree for undergrad, one of the things that I learned that was my favorite topic was the time value of money. And essentially, this conversation circumvents the idea that money is more valuable the longer that you can hold on to it, right? So, in reality, it seemed very contradictory, right? Because there's a notion that purchasing power of a dollar now is not the same purchasing power as a dollar used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whichever number you choose. That the power of the dollar has kind of decreased, right? Like a single dollar is not going to do anything for you. But that's the point, right? A dollar that you were able to hold on to back in 2005, back in 2000, back in 99, back in 2010, that dollar is no longer just a dollar because that dollar in the past now has the value of what the dollar means currently. Essentially, that dollar goes up with inflation the same way. So the same way we watch a house that was built in 1990 was once upon a time at a value of say $35,000, right? Or $16,000 or $73,000, like these really odd numbers. Those houses are now worth half a million, 1.5 million, that kind of thing, where it's more normal for us to see a house at 600 and something thousand dollars when once upon a time that just wouldn't be a thing. Or if it was a thing, it was absolute luxury. It was an absolute reach of you've made it, right? But that's the point. The dollars that you kept from that time have also increased in value that way. So this is the time value of money construct. We don't typically understand that in normal day to day, right? Because all we're doing is how much can my paycheck do today? And we kind of sit in that space. But your ability to hold on to money, the longer you could hold it in the right places, the more valuable it is. Of course, the dollar that you lock up in your closet is going to be a dollar regardless. But the dollar that you can leave in a savings account, even if the interest is not great, will still have accumulation capacity based on the fact that you were able to leave it in the bank for it to do anything. Now, of course, there's more to it because we could talk about stock and everything else, but I am no expert, so I'm not going to give you accounting advice. But you get what I'm saying here, that money that can sit still and move around in the economy has the ability to grow when you decide to cash it out. This is the thing that becomes important when you get these $100 million contracts, right? And even when you have your normal day to day job, your ability and capacity to save money, right? The seeds that you plant yesterday will be the fruit that you eat tomorrow. That's how that works. let's go back to Odell. Another important component of his discussion that he's having is about what he did and does with his money. And one of the things that he mentioned is flaunt. And I know that deep down we want to have a conversation about calling him foolish and talking about how ridiculous and irresponsible he is. But I want to take that notion of flaunting because you have money and I want to put it in a real context that we all can relate to because I think that that connection will be important to build our empathy and understanding, to reflect on it, not just on our ability to deflect and talk about him, but to pay attention how it shows up in ourselves. And this is why it's valuable to fast, because fasting is about the exploitation of your vulnerability in my purview. Right? When God tells you to rid yourself of these things, the point of ridding yourself is also in part you getting familiar with your flesh to understand the things that move you, that inspire you, that encourage you, that you're addicted to, that kind of stuff, to get familiar with your flesh so that you can beat your flesh when the time comes that you need to make spiritual, psychological, emotional decisions. And in this case, fiscal decisions. Let's think about it like this. If you grow up in the hood and you don't really got it like that, one of the things that you tend to do when you get your money is you're going to spend it. For everybody, that's not true. But let's take that context and apply it to something different, to another necessity that we all can relate to, specifically a hungry child. If you were to take a child that has been without consistent eating meals and so on, if you were to take a child that's malnourished, that is on the brink of starvation, that sort of thing, and you bring them into a place where there is an abundance of food, what do you typically see happen? You'll see things like that child stuff themselves, overindulgence, just eat until they sick because they like, I might not get this chance to eat this again. You may get a child that takes this food and hides this food in corners and things like that. I'm not sure if you ever seen it, but I've seen children do things like take food and hide it. And if you see kids hide food and go back to it for later, that's a survival thing. That's relative to the fact that they don't believe that the environment that they're in will consistently provide for them. So they tend to hide food so that they have it for later. And then you have this other child that has the tendency to look at things in full skepticism, where they're like, I'm not touching it. I don't trust it. They may indulge for a while and then they completely step away and fall back because they've conditioned themselves to believe that this is a fallacy and this will not last, so I won't disappoint myself. Somehow they figure it out. Somehow they know. Now, when you take that and you look at it and compare it to something like money, which is also an essential for life, in the life that we live, in the society that we live in, what do you have? You have people that might hoard money. You notice those elders that like they get money and they never spend any money whatsoever. They just put it all away, and they're like, "Yep, I don't know what's gonna happen. It's something could come up, and I'm gonna need it." You got the ones that overindulge. It's like, yeah, I didn't get it. You only live once. That YOLO shit, right? Like, oh, you only live once. Let me go and get this. Let me go get that. Let me go get this because I ain't have it then. I'm gonna make sure that I have it now. And then you have those that just don't participate. That's like, nope, I'm not even gonna face that version of roller coaster in excitement and disappointment if it were to go away. And what I paid attention to, or what I correlate this is the outcome. These are byproducts of stress disorders. When you look at the breakdown of stress disorders and anxiety and that sort of thing, PTSD, these are the symptoms that formulate PTSD outcomes. When we think about, say, social anxiety, right? When we think about hoarders, that is a type of anxiety, a stress disorder, a byproduct of stress. When you take all of these things and you look at them in its collective understanding, you realize that everybody exhibits their stress and their frustration a little bit differently. Even when you think about it as far as the presentation of fear, right? Because these are unrealized fears or unreal fears in some cases. There's a reality where there's people that will fight, and some people's fight will look like flaunting. There's some people whose fight, my bad. There's some people whose flight will look like, I'm just going to keep this here. Some people's fawn looks like, I'm not getting involved. I'm sitting still, not doing nothing. Hope for the best. This is the byproduct. This is the relationship. It's not different than the kid that's been hungry for months that finally gets the opportunity to have some food. And I think that it's so important for all of us to recognize what that looks like inside of ourselves, because sometimes it's not money. Sometimes it shows up in other ways. And I think that money is an important way to look at this, because why? A lot of us are participating in life, and we have this sort of addiction cycle with money, how we use it and so on, and how we show up in our day to day. So Odell's perception that he could not live the rest of his life on $100 million is because he is still in his indulgent phase. He's still in this space of, I'm going to take everything that I possibly can out of this situation, because what if I don't get it again? It's kind of like when we do crazy stuff like buy a car because we've been working a lot of overtime for the past 2 months. And our car note and our insurance is based on our earnings with overtime, but then we're not prepared for the time in which the overtime doesn't exist. We're not prepared for famine. And so inside of that, this is why things like tithing, right? Like, and if you think about tithing as a construct, that's the tax system. The 10% that you save in the event that famine were to arise. So yes, you might not necessarily give it to somebody else outside of yourself, because we're not even talking about tithing in its bigger picture. Do you tithe to the fruit to your future self? Do you tithe to yourself in the event that famine were to rise? Are you prepared for when the rain does not come and the crops don't grow? Or are you only living inside of the indulgence and the excess of today? So I thought that that was an interesting topic, and I hope that we pay attention and we have the ability to recognize, like, you know what, I do tend to overindulge in this space, and my indulgence is in this space is a byproduct of all of the time that I didn't have it then. And because you didn't have it at one point, you don't look at it as, I didn't have it then and I survived. My moms used to say that. What you don't have, you learn to deal with, you learn to live without. That was a very, very nice way of saying, we broke, baby, we not getting that. And I get it. But it didn't kill me. And I think you should probably tap into that strength of, you'll be fine without it. So, I guess leave a comment about something that you find yourself indulging in that you never really paid attention to before. And not that you need to give it up or sacrifice it, but I will encourage you to save a little bit for the future you that might want to indulge a little bit then, or might just need to survive. We'll talk later.